yourself for the moment. Yeah, good. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Our greetings to the venerable monks and nuns who are here at this moment for this unique discussion, branded as the bi-weekly Sutra discussion. So it seems that today we are not going to have that many monks and nuns. This is because there are a lot of activities taking place, especially the monks and nuns in the Theravada Buddhist tradition have started observing the Vasana season, Vas season, 3-month rain retreat. So they have programs. But today, we are so fortunate to have Bhante Jinananda from Ottawa, and Bhante Vijita also from Ottawa, and Venerable Vimala Bhikkhuni from Chicago, and Venerable Ayya Sudinna from North Carolina, and Bhante Kusala is also here. Actually, he is on the way. He is coming. And myself from Toronto, as you can see. So let us welcome all our viewers to this unique program. So we are so fortunate to have our friends and devotees and students who are watching us live on Facebook and YouTube. And we would like to include all of you to this great discussion. So let us begin the discussion by paying respect and homage to the Buddha. Oh, we have just Mataji, Reverend Kema joining us from Mumbai. Welcome. So let us begin this session by paying respect and homage to the Buddha by reciting Namo Tassa 3 times together. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. I pay my respect and homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened Buddha. Dear friends in Dhamma, as I said, today, majority of the monks and nuns are busy with their programs, weekend programs, and some monks and nuns informed me that they won't be able to join us today. But we are very fortunate to have these venerable monks and nuns for today's discussion. As you know, we have been discussing the Buddhism and mental health. We already had two great discussions. So today, we are also going to have the discussion with the same theme, but with a question. Is Buddhism enough to recover from trauma? Here we are going to have an open discussion. We don't have rules for the monks and nuns, But if you would like to express yourself, if you would like to tell us a story or share some tips uh, for those friends who are seeking some help to recover from traumas, please feel free to do so. Anyone can share a story or some tips. And also a kind reminder to our viewers on YouTube and Facebook, if you have any questions, we will take your questions too. So last week, and I asked this question from uh, our friend, my assistant David. Is Buddhism enough to recover from traumas? And immediately he said, yes, it worked for him. So maybe for some people, this may not be completely enough. Maybe they need some other help too. So here's a question before we talk about whether Buddhism is enough to recover from traumas. Let us a bit talk about what trauma is all about. Our Venerable Bante Konlainya from New York is also joining us. Bante, welcome. So what is trauma? Let anyone would like to say something about that. Maybe we can start from Mataji.
Okay, I started, thank you, Venerable. I started that up when I was researching this a little bit. I like to write little things up as you give questions. And first thing to figure out is what's qualified as trauma. It's an unconscious emotional reaction to a terrible event like an accident, a life-threatening experience in crossfire of arms, or a rape, a mugging, natural disaster causing immediate and immense change suddenly, followed by shock and automatic protective denial of the brain that can cause loss of memory and of time periods and such as that. Now, this is an extreme version. This can be very upsetting to the person, and Buddhists are famous for understanding that change can cause a lot of problems for people. Longer term post-traumatic reactions include unpredictable flashbacks, emotional sense re-stimulation, including the sudden recall of vision, sound, fear, headaches, nausea, empathetic pains, and other conditions. And the other issue in mental health is secondary diagnoses that follow compound the situation if a person is not taught how mind operates through times of trauma. That's what we've figured out with people we've dealt with. And this is where Buddhism can really help a person overcome post-traumatic conditions. Okay. So this stuff is coming out of mental health, CDC, WHO, and all of that, and also the work that we've done with mental health. And concerning trauma, there are mental and physical solutions for building resilience and recovery that are scientifically based, but these can work hand in hand with the Buddha Dhamma. That's what gets me excited about it, which can lend support to these kinds of treatments that are very, very nicely, that are scientifically proven modalities that are used in psychotherapy or psychology or psychiatry. And a lot of this, when you're dealing with a trauma experience, all depends on the level of it. It's like saying someone's depressed. It doesn't mean that they're a number 8 or 10. It means that most of them are 1 to 5 out of 10. And trauma works the same way on a gauge of where is the person. And what I found working with people with trauma over the years is that certain things have to happen that are really important. And Well, first, let me say that in Buddhism, mind, we teach mind is the forerunner of all states, which is really good to train a person to understand that and to understand how the mind is connected with the body and all the things that are happening, like panic attacks and all the different types of conditions that follow the trauma itself. But the other thing is atta and anatta. It plays a big part when it's defined as, we have to figure out how to define it though. When it's defined as personal or impersonal perspective, or in that way, it helps us realize more how things are happening, and that the things eventually the person can learn through Buddhism, nothing is happening to us. It's a shock, but everything is happening from us. And just to be quick to not go into a lot of this, but the things that are really important is that when you're faced with helping someone who's experiencing a trauma recently, or one that is turning up from the past and floating into the person's life, most important for all of us is to listen to what the suffering is first, and just listen and see if you can hear the underlying cause of the suffering that happened in the past and is happening now in the present. Again, it feels like to them, and bringing up worries for them in their mind about the future, because the insecurity the person goes through, the loss of identity, the loss of balance is absolutely tremendous, even with something as simple as a car that flipped over and the woman lost 2 hours of her life and can't remember what happened. Even that can cause collapse in families, and things like that can be that extreme. Okay, so our objective really should be to first determine the receptive level of the person's mind and how much they think the person can learn and retain anything that we give them to practice, or any advice we start working with them, because not all of monks are psychologists, but Buddhism is like a Buddhology that's better than psychology, in my opinion. I'm kind of prejudiced, because I can have a lot of fun with people, teaching them very simple things that can balance them right away. You might want to wait until we talk about, like, what can we do to fix that in one of the other questions, or I can comment now. What would you like me to do?
Okay, so we will continue with that. So first, now we understand what trauma is, and of course, the American Psychological Association also has given a definition to trauma. Trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event, like an accident, rape, or natural disaster. However, a person may experience trauma as a response to any event they find physically or emotionally threatening or harmful. So a traumatized person can feel a range of emotions both immediately after the event and in the long term. They may feel overwhelmed, helpless, shocked, or have difficulty processing their experiences. Trauma can also cause physical symptoms. Trauma can have long-term effects on the person's well-being. If symptoms persist and do not decrease in severity, it can indicate that the trauma has developed into a mental health disorder called post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. So of course,
Exactly.
so there are several forms of traumas: acute trauma, chronic trauma, complex trauma, and also a secondary trauma, vicarious trauma, which is someone or being with the traumatized person and is being affected to the person, maybe the family member or the healthcare worker or anyone, even a monk or nun who is helping the traumatized people. So anyways, so now I would is there any venerable who has helped a person with traumas? I know Bante Vijita, you work in the hospital. You help, you do counseling.
Thank you, Bante. This is a very I think, appropriate discussion with regard to mental health.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that I work in hospital. Yes, I do. I'm a registered psychotherapist and a certified spiritual care practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
But in this discussion, my contribution is as a Buddhist monk.
Mm.
So when we really think of the topic, is Buddhism enough to deal with trauma? I would say yes, and at the same time, I would say no. Uh, for a Buddhist practitioner, if someone is, has been practicing Buddhism and has the knowledge and understanding of the teaching of the Buddha, in an event of, feeling powerless, hopeless, and that person has the knowledge, understanding to face and overcome. But for a person who has faced such an event and struggling to overcome, for a certain level, that person, I would say, need maybe therapeutic support, guidance, and that person can incorporate Buddhist teaching to overcome that stressful event or powerlessness or fear or you know uh, guilt, losing trust, uh, and all those after effects. So there are lots of therapeutic interventions that we can abstract from the teachings of the Buddha.
Mm.
So I have dealt with the people who have had car accidents, bike accidents, and so those are kind of extreme, as the Mataji mentioned. But there can be minor events as well, like people have experienced in their childhood as well.
Mm.
So I remember there was a monk in Kandy when I was there. Uh, he had fear sleeping after coming from attending a funeral, and he had that frustration uh, for a long time. So somehow he managed with that. But I have seen he was, I think, in his late teenage years. But due to a past event when he was at home with his parents attending a funeral, so that kind of caused him to have that stress after coming back from funerals. He couldn't sleep and he just become very anxious and things like that. So such events also can cause trauma in past lives.
Mm.
So
Is that part of this secondary trauma or vicarious trauma?
yeah, when we talk about vicarious trauma, Bante, I think we more talk about therapists
Okay.
who has been listening to traumatic events for a long time, supporting those people.
Mm.
They get stressed out with those stories.
Yeah, that is what they call according to American Psychological Association, that is called the secondary trauma or vicarious trauma.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. So that's interesting. So, is there any other venerable who has experience of helping a person or people with traumas? Uh, have you met that, or has any person with trauma approach you for help? I see Venerable Vimla Bhikkhuni is shaking the head. Would you like to tell us a story? You have to unmute yourself, Vimla Bhikkhuni. Okay.
There, I think I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
I've had experiences where people have come to me where there's obviously a traumatic experience, or they may have had one from their childhood that they know about. They know they still deal with it. And I agree with Bhante Vijita. A lot of times those people don't have a strong enough practice in meditation or in the principles of Buddhism. And they really need to be working, I think, with a psychotherapist. And the way I might be able to help them is to help them with their meditation practice and advise them on a practice that can benefit them. And I always ask people when they come to me with any kind of mental health problem, I ask them if they're taking medication. And I recommend that they not drop any medication or make dramatic changes, because sometimes people will come wanting to get rid of their medication, and that might be what's holding them together. And I always advise people not to do that, not to drop it. You know, they need to work with their doctor or psychiatrist or their psychotherapist. And I'll try to work with them on the things that they can identify as if they are Buddhist. Sometimes they're really new. They'll come to our temple and they're pretty new. And then I'll talk to them and realize they may not even have a meditation practice that's consistent. And they may have a history of kind of looking for different fixes, looking for different ways to help, or ways to justify getting off medication that might be keeping them from hurting themselves or losing jobs. So I've met with a lot of people, but the first thing I think that we really need to understand is, if someone has a really strong practice and they have been, and then they begin to deal with something traumatic, that we're more likely to be of help for them, unless we are a psychotherapist, but we may be of more help to them. But someone who is just coming with a very young practice, I think if we work with them, we need to work in conjunction with the help they're getting from a psychotherapist, especially with trauma, because there's so many, some of the practitioners at our temple are also social workers who work with traumatized veterans. Those layers of trauma that just keep being piled on as they live their lives. So it's really, I really appreciate the psychotherapists who are trained to not only deal with the clinical trauma, but they also have studied mindfulness, and they understand the things that work from more of a Buddhist psychology point of view. So I think lots of people I think a lot depends on how much we can help them is going to be based on the level of their practice. We just have to be careful about that.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Now, Bhante Kondanya from New York. Bhante, it's so good to see you after a long time. We are so happy to have you today. I know, Bhante, you have been serving the people in New York City for many years. I would say more than 3 decades. Do you know any stories like the people coming to you with trauma seeking help from you? Like how did you help?
Yes, I think we all have. Thank you, Venerable Sarnapala and Venerable Monks. Nice to see you all after some time, because I always have a conflict of programs in Saturdays. Luckily today I don't have anything now. But yes, to answer your question, yes, there are many people, many situations that we have to face. As I think we all, Buddhist monks, There are people hearing about us. They come hearing about meditation. They reach out to us seeking help. So they openly discuss their problems. For example, it is interesting to see that during the 9/11, who were coming here to practice meditation, they were really scared of at that time. I think when Kema was here also at that time, even afterwards. So that was the first time I think I had to go for interviews many times in the community TV. So one after another, those producers invited us and they asked questions. And so people start seeing us more openly. And they came here with fear in their mind. So some people were working in that area. So they were scared to go back to work. I remember that one lady who used to come to meditate with us. She's so scared. We had to speak. Friendly, openly we were talking. And I asked her, why are you scared to go back to work? I understand that was something had happened very big. And the damage is done. I personally thought, we just, openly, we were talking. And I said, for me, I do not have fear of sudden attack again soon. So, but this person, she was working in higher floors, and we are scared because there could be another attacks. And I said, yeah, attacks could be taking place anytime. But if you really look at it, we know that fear is all around. Terrorists could be there and things. But I normally imagine, I said, soon in this situation, there won't be anybody coming back to attack us. So realistically looking at things, analyzing situations, not that soon would be another attack. So likewise, we were discussing. So through the discussions, we can open out our own fears that hidden in our mind. So that person could see that. And so always, but being where you are, of course, they are not asking you to go back soon. But since you are, that traumatic conditions, they understanding the situation, they have given, vacation-like period for those people who were working nearby. And but they start looking at meditation and practicing meditation. Of course, always, we are very connected with our breath. And from that's always we do that. Take a deep breath and let it out. So we know that release our stresses. So stresses filled with us. So we, without even somebody who is not known to meditation, they would ask you to take a deep breath and let it out. So that's a big release for us. So similarly, people who had practicing meditation, we opened their path and shown it. So this is how it works. This is what Buddha did. So for example, like, dread and fear, Bhaya Bhairava Sutta, when we are looking at it, what Buddha guided us, how he guided us. And using those, teaching parts, we can discuss with people, and they kind of, when you are alone, you are simply thinking to yourself, you have more fear inside, we don't know how to, but when you talk out with the people, so that gives you some ideas and actually makes you a little bit of free from that anxieties that build it up in us and stresses that we holding on to. It's always nice for them to provide an opportunity to express their fears, express their feelings, what's sitting inside them. Because inside, when we are alone, a lot of ideas could build up, and through that, stress is building up. So people, we all need to express it out, then we can release the stresses that we are holding on to. I think that way they go back, with very, cheerful faces when they, after coming and sit down and talking to us. Maybe it's maybe not permanent. It may appear again because, people are anxious. Most problem is, I think what I see is they are alone. They don't have someone to talk to.
Yeah.
So that is why they are reaching out. Okay, I heard there's a temple there. I heard there are monks. So they all get the information, collected them, and come back and sit down and talk. Once they express their feelings, their thoughts, they are released from those stresses. What they are. I think that is for us, that is part of that counseling that we do. Be a good listener. Very important is to be a good listener. I think that's one of the good qualities that we all have to have as a therapist, or whoever in the helping field, mentally, helping other people. So we all can support those people, being a good listener. There could be nuances. If you listen carefully, from them you can find the answers to give it back to them.
Yeah.
I think that I have seen in many places. For example, we have very attracted. I used to go to this a couple of hospitals as well as this, jail nearby. We had to have one here, but now it's closed and we don't have that facility anymore. But these young people who are in this incarceration, they're really kind of attracted to us. I don't know why. Seeing our robe, seeing our colors, I don't know what it is, but they really like to practice meditation, or maybe they are finding a way out in their, incarceration, those, cells that they are confined to. Something was there I didn't understand, but they were very much, with enthusiasm. They took part in those sessions that I used to have. So I see that always people are interested, or maybe inquisitive. They come and willing to talk to you.
Yeah.
So that is a very important thing, for us. They trust us for some reasons.
I think the monks and nuns are good listeners, and also with a heart full of compassion for the people. I think they find it very connected, and maybe it's a healing for them. So Bhante, hold your thoughts, and I know as we continue this discussion, you may remember more stories. So we have Bhante Sankitya from Detroit raised his hand. I'm very positive he has a very good story to tell us. Bhante Sankitya.
Yes, Bhante, thank you. I think in my life also, I have many experiences, talking to these traumatic situations, people dealing with these problems. According to what I have seen, especially in this part of the world, why people come to meditation, why they come to temples, they have a good reason. So one of them is that they are going through some sort of traumatic experience in their life. So most of the time in their early childhood, many people, especially young people, they have this kind of very severe experience, very intense childhood experience. Some people have been abused by their parents, because of addicted parents. So what they have gone through in the families, they have very hard time dealing with their relationships, their own individuals. So this kind of situation. So they find a lot of help from meditation practice, the Buddhist counseling, Buddhist psychotherapy, as many of the Bhantes and Bhikkhunis just explained. So it's very important to understand how these traumatic situations, experiences are affecting different areas of life. Directly as we can see, this past very strong experiences can directly affect individuals with the irritability. They can easily get angry about people, situations, And sometimes that can directly affect their sleep patterns. They cannot easily go to sleep. They get nightmares. They suddenly wake up in the middle of the night. So that is a very special area. And also they have very complex relationship problems, especially if they have been abused by their parents or partners or anyone else. So they have very hard time facing society, facing even talking to someone. They are very afraid of reaching out to people. And as Bhante Kondaji mentioned, sharing it, sharing their past experience is very important in releasing that tension and anxiety. So people have hard time with relationship. Some people are very angry about the world sometimes, society, individuals who are directly connected with their traumatic experiences. Sometimes that can really disrupt their normal day-to-day lifestyle. So I think for almost all these areas, we have good tools in our Buddhist psychology, Buddhist teachings, as we all, as monks and nuns, are trying to cultivate all these good qualities. At the same time, we are sharing these things with others. I think for each and every aspect or area of these affected aspects, we have different tools in Buddhist teachings if we can wisely use them. Like for the anger, we have the direct method of practicing gentleness, kindness, loving kindness, as we know. And also, most importantly, to understand and reflect on the impermanence, right? So most of these traumatic situations are coming from the past. They cannot easily forget about something that happened in the past, right? So if one is able to understand the impermanent nature of the world, life circumstances, these situations, if we can simply consider that, oh, it is just something that happened in the past, it is not now, learning to let go, by understanding the impermanent nature of these things, which is a very common teaching of the Buddhist teachings, it would be a very effective technique, right? And also the forgiveness is one of another important quality and practice that can be very helpful, to the people or relationships involved in that traumatic situation. Acknowledging, accepting that something happened in the past, but if we can consider these things happen because of a lack of understanding, lack of mindfulness, lack of education, any spiritual value. So if we can simply reflect on these areas, and if we can invoke some forgiveness, sometimes these things can happen because of our mistakes too. So in that case, we have to be able to forgive ourselves also, very importantly. So these kind of tools are there in our toolbox, right, in our Buddhist practice. So we have to be very smart enough selecting, using these proper techniques accordingly.
Okay, so thank you, Bhante Sankitya. I think that's a very valuable the story and the and some great advice or words of wisdom and encouraging words that you have shared for our viewers. And I'm very positive. They are carefully listening and they're trying to incorporate these teachings into their life. We have Bhante Jinananda from Ottawa raised his hands. Bhante Jinananda, I know you also do a lot of counseling. You yourself as a meditation teacher, and I'm positive people come to you with these traumas. But Bhante Jinananda, maybe if it is possible, do you know how Buddha helped a person with trauma? If you know any story from the text, otherwise feel free to tell a modern story.
Thank you, Bhante, for the opportunity. I'm I was listening carefully with these venerable monks' experience and also expertise knowledge about uh, trauma and other related things. Yeah, that's what I was thinking when we consider whether Buddhism is rich enough to find solutions to trauma. I was thinking about the Buddha and how he handled those situations. This is one reason why we say that the Buddha is a great teacher of all time, because he helped those people who had those problems with very simple things. If I draw your attention to the stories of Kisagotami and Patachara, and also Angulimala and
Mm.
many other people who are unknown in the stories, he gave simple tips just to level their mind and bring them into the present moment. If you look
Mm.
at the story of Patachara and Kisagotami, they were not in the normal mindset, even to understand who they are
Mm.
because of the PTDS as they experience. However, Buddha led them, to stay in that position, experience for certain time, with some uh, normal, neutral activity, so that Buddha let them understand what kind of people they are and what sort of things happen to them. If you look at Kisa Gotami, and she was so upset and was not in the proper mindset with the experience of the demise of the child, and Buddha asked her to go and find a mustard, handful of mustard seed from a house where there was no death happen. But when she went to house to house, she came to an understanding that this is futile and this is not right, so that everybody has the same experience that I had, so that I should be I should be calming down and go to the Buddha. So Buddha let this lady to understand what exactly happened to her. And many people who started learning about the Buddha's stories, of course, come across these stories, so that I do not want to bring all the stories into the stage, but I just want to draw your attention to one particular incident which happened to Lady Visakha, one of the greatest ladies at the time of the Buddha.
Mm.
uh, Lady Visakha was very good practitioner. According to the available information, they came to an enlightened stage called Sotapanna at her very early age of life.
Mm.
But she got married and had a lot of children and also grandchildren. So one day, one of the grandson died. It was an untimely death. Due to the intense love and affections to her children and also grandchildren, she was not able to stop crying, and very intense situation was not very controlled. And during the day, uh, she came to the monastery. She rushed to the monastery with not proper clothes, and her hair was all over. So then the Buddha asked, "Why did you come in this way? What happened to you?"
Mm.
Then Lady Visakha said that one of the grandson died. I loved him so much, and I cannot bear that pain.
Mm.
Then the Buddha did not ask her to stop crying. Buddha did not, suggest anything to do immediately. But Buddha asked some questions of maintaining his peaceful mind, that how many people do you think Lady Visakha, live in the city Savatthi? It's over millions, many people. And no, the first question was, do you like to have, many children as Savatthi, hold? Like if there are 2 million people in Savatthi, do you like to have such a number of children for you? Venerable sir, if I have such a number of children in my family, I would be the most happiest person in this world because I love children. Then the Buddha asked, how is the mortality of the city of Savatthi? Uh, Lady Visakha said that Bante, there are days that 20 people died, 10 people died, 9 people, 5 people, and there are many days that this limit goes over. So Bante, there is no day that there is no death. Each day, at least a single person died. So then Buddha asked, if you think that you should have children up to the level, up to the number of, residents or citizens of Savatthi in your family as your children, you would be crying each day. That is the point that the Buddha wanted to show with this long story. Then Buddha said here, the Dhamma, that if you have 100 attachment, you have 100 suffering. If you have 90 attachment, you have 90 suffering. If you have 20 attachment, you have 20 suffering. And if you have one attachment, there is only one suffering. And if you have no attachment at all, there is no suffering. Having said this to Lady Visakha, Buddha pointed out there that mental trauma or any other mental disorders come because of the attachment we have, because of the affection we have, because of the greedy mind we have. So that Buddhism, when we have the question that Buddhism enough for dealing with the trauma, I guess yes, because we didn't dig out yet to the teachings of the Buddha. We have been talking all around Buddha's teaching about the solution. Actually, in my opinion, we haven't gone to the true teachings of the Buddha yet to discuss what exactly the offer. You asked the question whether you have some stories from the text, whether the Buddha, had what kind of things Buddha offered for those people and incident just to get them recovered. So I would come to that particular teachings of the Buddha later on, but for the moment I can tell you that there are many such incidents in the text, that how the Buddha deal with those situations. And I think Buddha was so accurate. Buddha did not get any teachings, deep teaching in his package immediately for those people, but let them stay calm and then find some solution. Talking to them nicely would be one of the solutions for them to accept the fact that this person, the Buddha, is a quite good person for me to find a solution. Some sort of solutions, immediate solutions, were given by the Buddha for those people to recover from that intense heat of the trauma. Later on, he gave a extended version of the teaching for them to completely get rid of that trauma.
Yeah, so that's thank you, Bhante Jinananda, for telling us the story of Lady Vishaka, and I think that story itself sheds some light to us, or adding more value into this discussion. And those who are listening, they are also, I'm positive they are benefiting from this. And of course, we will get back to the detailed teaching of the Buddha. And so now, Bhante Kusala from Bangladesh Buddhist Vihara of Toronto is joining us. Bhante Kusala, you raised your hand. I'm positive you have a story or some tips to share with us.
Thank you, Bhante. So joining with Bhante Jinananda here, he was speaking about the Lady Visakha. I'm going to take us all to Anatha Pindika, also a great supporter of the Buddha. And he he had a granddaughter. Now this is about children's mind, how they think. And one time she was playing in the kitchen, and she saw the lady in the kitchen, whoever was helping there, was making something from using flour. And this, because she loved this little granddaughter, she made a toy, like a doll, and then gave it to the little girl. And she was quite happy about it. And she started taking that little doll as her own daughter. And as she was playing, she accidentally dropped it. And this was so traumatic to her. And she thought this daughter died, and they could not stop her from crying. So they decided, okay, the only thing we can do now is, what we know is giving dana to the Buddha. And when the Buddha comes, he will give talks, and this child will be happy. And they, in fact, went to the monastery, invited the Buddha. The Buddha came with 500 monks. And this went on for 1 month until, the little girl felt like there is a whole ritual going on to transfer merits to this little, doll. And the king later inquired why the Buddha has not come. King Kosala, inquired why the Buddha has not come to the palace for a meal. Then he came to know that the Buddha is visiting Anathapindika's place for lunch every day for a month. And the king also said, oh, this is a great opportunity. We will also transfer merits to this little doll. And he started giving dana to monks for another month. And then villagers, town people, they also they were also wondering why the Buddha is not seen in our town. And they too started giving, later another month. So this went on like for 3 months, giving dana, and people listening to the Dhamma and transferring merits to, some good vibes to a kind of an object, that is not live, something that is. So people might think like, are they crazy? Was the Buddha crazy to do this? Well, not really. He made it an opportunity. He compassionately accepted this invitation and went on benefiting so many people, using that as a metaphor to teach people on letting go. Everything that arises has the nature of passing away. This is the foundation of the kind of teaching the Buddha would give in an event like this. So this is the little story. And I think later on we will come back with other details as we go on. I see Bhante Vijita's hand is up, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good story. Actually, thank you, Bhante Kusala, for telling us that story. I think it's very powerful, like how a little child was traumatized, but she thought that the doll was dead, and she was so much attached to it. So I think Buddha used the mechanism how to heal. I think this is related to just, I saw one comment from Mandy Smith who says healing trauma through the heart. And this is what I think Buddha did to this little child during that time. So Bhante Vijita.
Thank you, Bhante, and thank you, venerable monks and nuns. And I was listening to the stories and experiences from your own life and the teachings of the Buddha as well. As Bhante Kondanya mentioned, I wanted to highlight that when we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, also people with traumatic events, one thing that I see is very helpful is the concept of impermanence, anicca, from the teaching of the Buddha. So when we think about, a traumatic incident that happens in the past, mostly people experience that they have the experience of powerlessness, hopelessness, and difficulty of finding meaning and purpose, trusting people. Also, their mind, the state of mind is always feel like the world is not a safe place, and that those thoughts creating intense fear and anxiety. So that can happen wherever they go. It depends on the situation. Some situation provoke those thoughts. Even people, start mindfulness practice. Sometimes like kind of a common understanding that meditation is helpful and mindfulness is helpful with anything. So they just start practicing mindfulness. But the problem with that is without proper guidance and understanding, the mindfulness practice in the teaching of the Buddha is highly based on understanding or samadhi. So without samadhi, when someone is starting practicing mindfulness or without right vision, that can provoke those experiences, and that can create intense fear again, kind of creating the environment to those events to arise and over again. So therefore, proper guidance and proper understanding of Dhamma is very, I see, is very important for people who have gone through those traumatic events if they practice mindfulness. So that's why previously I mentioned having proper therapeutic guidance along with the teaching of the Buddha can increase the effectivity of their well-being. So one thing that as I said, I want to highlight is the concept of impermanence, because whatever happened in the past has already happened. One of the very interesting, very unique teaching of the Buddha is, Buddha says that when a thought arises in the mind, it arises in the present moment. No matter it's related to past or future, it arises based on causes and conditions right now, right in this moment. It can be fear, worries, anxiety, all of them arise in the present moment. So gaining that ability to see the nature of impermanence of those thoughts gives them power, give them confidence that I'm not letting these thoughts, experiences to control me. Rather, I have the power to see them as they arise and passes away. So limit the reaction to those past events and thoughts that arise in the present moment is a very powerful technique for those who experience intense fear and anxiety. Gaining that sense of powerfulness, that power, the sense of power that I have that ability, a sense of power in my life that I can lead to the direction that I want. So thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, thank you. Well, that's amazing. How you explain this. This understanding Dhamma, having the right perspective, right understanding, is the key to healing from traumas. Let's say now, I just want to bring to your attention, like the traumatic experiences that people have. Of course, in some research are showing that estimate that 60 to 75% of people in North America experience a traumatic event at some point. And the charity mind in the United Kingdom lists the following as potential causes of trauma. bullying, harassment, physical, psychological, or sexual abuse, sexual assault, traffic collisions, childbirth, life-threatening illnesses, sudden loss of a loved one, being attacked, being kidnapped, acts of terrorism, natural disasters, war, and etc. So now, those who are experiencing this, or those who have these traumatic experiences, now, how, of course, almost all of you shed a lot of lights with respect to healing. Now, I know Mataji, Reverend Kema, you said, now today's topic is Buddhism enough to help people recover from trauma? Now you said yes. Now, how, so give us some, share some steps, maybe for the greater benefit of the people. You have to unmute yourself. Mataji, you have to unmute. Mataji, you have to unmute. Okay.
I'm sorry. We have really good material in the Buddha Dhamma itself to set up a plan like the Venerables are talking about, where first we can help to stabilize the person by listening and hear the Four Noble Truths that's happening to them right now. Identify the suffering, hear them talk about the cause of it, and what desire for the cessation. Then we have this wonderful thing, anicca, which Bhante Vajita spoke about, which saved my life. I mean, literally saved my life. Because what happened to me was I was taken and I was listened to. Then what happened was I was balanced by the Bhattacharata Sutta, which I swear by now, because I always used it as an entryway. It's a tiny little sutta about the past, the future, and the present. But I figured out that people are usually imbalanced about understanding time. They think they know what those three words mean, but they really don't have integrated those words into what the past really is. And so I get them to teach me what is true about the past, what is true about the future, what is true about the present time. And that brings the person to, I'm not alone. I can become fully alive in the present time. And the present time is a safe place to stay and move as change is happening in my life. And that was an eye-opener for me after what I had been through for about the last 2 years before I started doing this at 50 years old without any knowledge of Buddhism. That's the big one. And I teach a lot of people here in India who are not Buddhist. I teach Hindus and Sikhs and exposed to Muslims and everybody who come and ask for help. And the way I help them is not necessarily, we have a saying, the Buddha did not teach Buddhists. He just taught the people here in India and what he had found. So this first part was stabilization and understanding time. The second part was how fast this change can be upsetting to the human being. But with the above lessons I just mentioned, then all of a sudden we know everything is changing all the time. And I'm not alone. This is happening to all human beings. By not being alone is a really big deal to understand that you're not alone in this. And I kind of welcome them into the movie set where they've been hired just like all other human beings to play a part in the movie called My Life. And we all are going through this incredible movie that you're making of your life, and we're all facing the same exact things, and then this everything changes, nothing stays the same also means another really big point. I am not stuck. I am not caught by what happened along my path of life as I was going on. I can try to stay in my little car, the present time, as I go through life like this, and let the past go and let the future go. But first, I have to identify them and understand why I'm letting them go and not interrupt this place that is the present time. Then the second thing is that the Shila has everything to do with supporting meditation. But what I found was I can't ask them to concentrate on any kind of object. I can work like using the breath. I do teach breath too, but rarely, because I'm devoted to the Brahma Viharas. I can teach them the Brahma Viharas and the story of a butterfly. And a butterfly has an egg, and then it has a pupa, then it makes a chrysalis, and then it's born into a butterfly. And the Brahma Viharas, if you learn to practice them with me, when you can really relax with the practice of the Brahma Viharas, because the metta will turn into karuna, the karuna will turn into joy, the joy will turn into gradual equanimity. And each one of those has a gift for you. Each one of you are born with the little seeds inside you that haven't been ever tapped into because of the madness and speed of energy of the world. And these little tiny seeds, if you're practicing metta, your mind will not produce anything having to do with ill will. And once you're into karuna, there will be no arising thoughts of cruelty to anyone. And then once you fall into the joy, experiencing the joy, then you will not have any discontent. You can't have discontent when joy is occupying the mind. And our science tells us the mind only does one thing at a time. And once that starts happening for you, you begin to level out and calm down. So the stunning discovery is how fast we can change as human beings. And truthfully, we can be taught that we are powerful. That's the other thing. In trauma, one of the things you lose worse than anything is the loss of self-worth, the failing confidence, the social withdrawal, the restlessness, guilt, remorse, blame, depression, and unexpected panic attacks. I went through panic attacks. No one can tell you what this is like. You have to experience it. You're taking your daughter to the mall. I tried to take her to the mall after the events happened and things. And what happened was I ended up soaking wet in the middle of a mall around all these people and had to run out and get in the car. She was a sweetheart. My 11-year-old took me again and again to the mall and said, Mom, we will go in for 5 minutes, just 10, to see the shoes. We won't buy them. He was so great with me that finally I could take her in for 20 minutes to buy a pair of shoes. She had a plan. So she was helping me, but she was getting, what she wanted to, but this was fun. And in my experience with the trauma of the COVID-19, I can safely say that all of us should work together with all the available types of modalities and have great respect for the medication. Here's why. You see, in the world of medication and drugs, palliative treatment for cancer when you're terminally ill and you're going to die, that's the most serious one, and the stuff can kill you. The next worst one's down. If you've been in sociology or you're in psychotherapy, you know the psychotropics are the next dangerous set of drugs. Why? Because a lot of them, you wean the person on, and in order for them to get off, they have to get off. Why do they want to get off so badly? The depressive level medications, if you haven't ever had them, they make you live just like this. Now, to us, maybe that sounds nice because the Arahat is like this, okay, like that. There is no joy, there is no sadness, there is no excitement, there is no dullness, there is just this. And there's a secret about depressive disorders. If they are labeled bipolar, you can bet that their IQs are high, from 128 to 138 or 9, almost to the Menzies to 140. And these people are very bright. And that whatever threw them into their bipolar was a very traumatic experience. You have to understand that. And they want out. They want to feel again. And all the drugs settle them so much. Now, if you can, the best ideal situation in the whole world is to find psychoanalysts, psychiatrists, and psychologists who are willing to work hand in hand with Buddhology and Buddhist philosophy. I mean, that is the gift that you, if you can find that, that's absolutely great. But the monks need to make sure that the practitioners understand that you're not going to threaten them and say, by helping the person to get off a drug when they should be weaned off and doing it in conjunction with the doctor. It's very serious. Okay.
Yeah.
Because all that you do, they can fall into a hole right away when that happens, and you don't want that one to happen. So stabilization is possible. And this whole thing about anicca, dukkha, anatta is absolutely fantastic if we don't go overboard and scare them with anatta. Yeah. Anatta has to be treated delicately. And the Buddha knew this in the suttas. He talks about self, no self. He didn't know what was going to happen in psychology about ego and Freud. He didn't know, okay? But he also had seen it translated as personality and non-personality. And then another interpretation similar to that. And that's the one that we grabbed onto and said, well, the root word is personal. And let's look at how precisely suffering works. I have to be involved personally to crave. And the craving then is the condition for clinging. And then the condition for habitual tendencies to rise up and turn into serious emotional reactions. And what we're about in Buddhism, very clearly in the psychology community, that I wish I could get all psychologists and psychiatrists to understand, is we are not a threat to anyone's ego. We are attempting to do the same thing that they are attempting to do with a balanced ego, where we understand conventional reality and what we're studying in the ultimate reality. These are two different things. When we get these mixed up, we can have a great deal of trouble. But anyway, what you're talking about, you're hitting on the Buddhist cues. Anicca, the dukkha, anatta, and the time frame of things. And the only other point I want to make is whenever something threatens a person, if you teach them to abandon it, not sit with it, abandon it, especially in trauma. Because if they start to sit with something that was the trauma, you are very likely to feed a reactive post-traumatic event. That's why the loving kindness, the forgiveness, the loving kindness, the compassion works so well. That's
here's a question. And then do you think all these traumatic experiences are being triggered by the unconsciousness, or do you think the being conscious of the unconscious would help those people with trauma recover?
Well, see, what we do is, I love dependent origination. And I think that Buddhaghosa was totally wrong telling people it was so heavy with the weight of the ocean would be on top of your head. Because if you start to talk to a person, I can talk to a truck driver and explain dependent origination, starting with the 6 sense doors: contact, feeling, craving, clinging, habitual reactions, and the birth of reaction. And I can have them see that within an hour. And they can go home and change their life if I play with anicca with them and teach them the Baddha Karata Sutta, the guts of it. It's just the prose. It's a very simple little thing. The Christians have the same saying, the past is history, tomorrow is a mystery. So let's not give our energy in those two directions. Let's stay in the present. And why, mommy, is it called the present? We would say as children. And she would say, because it's a present, because you're right here now, and we can play and have a good feeling and a happy feeling. Whenever something negative comes up, the Buddha told us to abandon it Relinquish the imperfection, identify it as an imperfection, relinquish it and replace it. If we don't practice right effort, which by the way has almost been completely lost off the Eightfold Path, if we don't go back and look very closely at what right effort was, it was a practice. It had 4 steps. You recognize whenever you have an unwholesome mind state in your mind, that, and we can say, what is an unwholesome mind state? I'm not Buddhist, tell me. When you feel tension and tightness arising, think now about your trauma. When you feel that thing starting to happen, starting to rise up before the panic attack happens, you feel a change in your body. So the Vipassana student is ideal and learns this very fast. They can learn to identify the change in their body. And what does it say? Secondly, release the unwholesome mind state. Then what? You relax your head, relax. So you smile as you come back to what you're doing and your task in life. Forget about being at the temple sitting in meditation only, or in the closet sitting in meditation, not telling anyone you meditate. Forget about that. But whenever something happens, you return to your task in the office. You return to your task in driving the cab. You return to your task and you smile into it. You feed it a wholesome direction in place of the unwholesome that you let go. Now, you can all go home. You can all test exactly what I'm saying. But if you just let go of an unwholesome state and continue on, the unwholesome state comes back. Why? Why? You have to go to the Samyutta Nikaya in the Bhujanga Samyutta. You have to find the discussion on page 1597 of Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, and you have to read that discussion because that discussion is really important. It is a discussion on the nourishment and the denourishment of a hindrance in direct relationship to the arising or the non-arising of your 7 enlightenment factors. You cannot develop your 7 enlightenment factors so you can fall into cessation unless you are balanced. You see, you have to let go of the hindrance and not pay attention to it, or go to the Alagadupa Sutta in section and read section 6, where the Buddha declares in the situation with Arati, he declares very clearly, this is a wrong way to look at things. I never told you to engage a distraction. I told you that if an obstacle comes up, the only way it can become a distraction is if you engage it. That's what that sentence says. That's exactly what it means. If you engage it, it's going to come back because you are feeding it according to the lessons on the nourishment of a hindrance.
Okay, so that means, maybe traumatic experience is a part of the Ioniso Manasukara, and when you become Yoniso Manasukara, pay wise attention. That is, okay, so that's interesting. So now, Bhante, Jinananda, you raised your hand. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think some of the things I thought of sharing came out of from Mataji, so I do not want to repeat them. But only thing I just want to tell here, depending on the time, is that the Buddha's teaching is not only is not a limited version for particular illness called trauma or whatever. Buddha's teaching is vast, just like the ocean, and he is trying to help people to get out of those situations where people have trauma or whatever it is. Right? That's why Bhante Vijita and Mataji pointed out the fact that impermanence, practice on that could be, one of the key elements for someone to get out of those opportunities. So Buddha is trying to help people to get out of those situations, as Mataji rightly mentioned that Samma Vayama in the teaching, the four type of effort would be the key for anyone to practice to get out of these situations. First one is Samvara, or just try your personal best to get out of those situations where you don't have the problem yet. And if that is not working, so you have it. You have the problem, you have mental disorders, you have those problems. So try to get rid that out of your mind.
Yeah.
So that then you have the impermanence, you have other teachings behind you. So it's a long practice that you can take just to get out of those problems. And that is one side of the Buddha's teaching for trauma or any other mental illness. I just want to emphasize the fact that what is the Pali word for trauma? I think it's kampana, like, you know, you are becoming nowhere and you don't feel who you are and what you are when something sudden happened to you. So in Dajjagga Sutta, in the Tripitaka, we have found this statement of the Buddha that if you have a kampana or trauma-like situation, you just think about the Buddha or the Dhamma or the Sangha in an orderly manner just to get out of that possibility of trauma. And then there are many instances Buddha said that you can practice some sort of practices in the Noble Eightfold Path just to get out of it. So I think my just point is that Buddha's teaching is to make people ready to get out of those problems well before people fall into those problems. And if you have those problems, you can slowly get the support from teachers. For example, I experienced one of my close friends' child, had a very trauma situation. He saw that child, 10 years old child, saw that one person burned in a huge flame. And after that incident, this child is even afraid of kerosene lamp and oil lamp, and he's unable to see anything like that. But slowly this child was fed with some teachings of impermanence, and also some other important teachings like Buddha. Just, my son, think about the Buddha when you have such situation. So that child was able to overcome the PTDS and other situation for a couple of years. So depending on the time, my suggestion for many people to read the discourses and get into Sammaditthi and Four Noble Truths, and of course, Satipatthana. When we say Satipatthana, people think that it is only taking a cushion and sit down and meditate. No, as Venerable Vijita said clearly, that sometimes meditation doesn't work for many people who have those problems, because we have to get ready with so many practices before the meditation, just to use meditation as a treatment in Buddhism for mental trauma. So I think we all have to understand what the Buddha said in the Noble Eightfold Path. If we precisely limit to that particular teaching and get an understanding about it, just to find some solutions from the Buddhist teaching for trauma.
Okay, so
That's really true.
yeah, thank you, Bhante Jinananda. Now, of course, we have Bhante Sila joining us from Minnesota, and he has asked a question, how to get out of traumatic situation or traumas. Bhante Kusala, you raised your hand. If you would like, you could, reply to this question.
Bhante, yes, responding to Bhante Sela's important question,
Yeah.
I wanted to, share some thoughts on that. As a person who has been through trauma in my life, so sometimes people may think that, oh, these monks speak like they never experienced any trauma. But to be honest, we also have gone through traumatic situations. And speaking from the experience, when the tsunami came, I was living in a coastal temple, We were just 1 kilometer from the ocean, Polhena Beach in southern Sri Lanka, and I was just a newly ordained monk, and a lot started happening in such a short time, and I didn't know how to deal with all of that. And couple of months in after the tsunami, I was on a bus going to Galle and looking at the ocean. Even the nearest waves looked like a tsunami to me. But with knowledge, with learning, I knew that tsunamis start really far away into the ocean, and earthquakes should happen. But that knowledge didn't help so much. I think many people went through such traumatic situations at that time in 2004 in the Indian Ocean tsunami. And one lady named Sonali Dharaniyagala, she wrote a book called Wave, and that has been published and is available for people to read on, I think, not free, I guess, but somehow if you have a chance, it's popular. Please read it. And what she did there was to write it down with the help of a psychotherapist in New York City. And so she could treat that traumatic experience as, after writing it down, she could treat it as that thing in the book, not the thing in her mind, because she lost her 2 children, her husband in the tsunami, and her parents as well, and other relatives. Many people went through that. So these experiences tell us, going back to that question of Bhante Sila, how to get out of trauma? We may say, the book is not Whale, I guess it is called Wave, W-A-V-E. Yeah, sorry about that. So please take time with trauma. Forgive yourself for not understanding and talk it over with someone who is caring and someone who has empathy and time to listen to. It takes years. With other traumatic experiences, in family, my brother chose to take revenge, and in my case, I chose to forgive. But it took me like so many years to even understand that what I did was right, because I was debating in my mind for people who caused that traumatic situation. I know Bhante Sankhya sometimes share that simile about a cat going by a mirror, and all of a sudden the cat jumps, and because it can't tell whether it is a reflection of its own image or something else. Just like that, our brains cannot tell what we are processing. A rush of emotions, a traumatic experience, we really don't process that well. It takes time.
Yeah.
And if you have issues like that, maybe avoid watching things about trauma, avoid watching plane crashes, avoid watching car accidents in YouTube obsessively, because it will bring back those memories. So I think this is what I like to add
Yeah,
for
no,
the
thank
time
you.
being.
Thank you, Bhante Kusala, for sharing your own traumatic experience and how you chose to heal yourself in using the Buddhist wisdom. And I think now, of course, we actually time is up to end this discussion. And today we are very, very fortunate to have our teacher, Bhante Mudita, joining us from Detroit, but he's on and off. I don't know whether he can hear us or not, but I see him here, and time to time we see his uh, picture or his video. So, well, as you know, as a monk, I had many people coming to seek some help. And as I continued running these weekly sessions, I know there are a lot of people who come here, and sometimes I don't know who they are, and and also as a monk and as my personal principle, I never bother to get their information. I don't have a form for people to fill out. who they are, to tell their story, or to give me their information. I always tell people, well, this is happening every week on this day, this time, every Wednesday from 6 to 7 or 7 to 8:30. So anyone can come. And I see people are carefully listening. They are practicing meditation with us. And then, after a while, I see those who have not come to say hello to me or talk to me. They, wait for me to say hello, to greet, or to say something. And then they ask for appointment. So I give them appointment, to come and talk to me. Then I listen to their stories, like, they tell their traumatic experiences, how the teachings that the half an hour Dhamma talk we gave was immense help to them, how meditation was, a great benefit to them. But then, so I have a lot of stories like that, but we don't have time to tell all the stories. But I have a question for all of you, like, maybe this is to question this to discuss maybe later on. Like, today's question was, is Buddhism enough to recover from traumas? Now, of course, as monks and nuns, we could say yes, but how about those who are not Buddhists, those who don't follow Buddhism? Let's say they could say, well, by going to church, could that help me? By going to mosque, praying to God, could that help me? Or by doing this and that, could help me, something like that. So, do you have a brief answer, yes or no? Like, Mataji, you, just 1 minute. Unmute yourself. You have to unmute. We can't hear you, Mataji.
Please unmute.
I think the answer is yes, but it's a trap, because right now you have so much going on in science with neurology, with cognitive psychology, and the discovery of neuroplasticity in the brain. Don't cheat yourself. If you want to catch up, go on the internet and look up on YouTube how to change a habit if I'm over 25 years old. And you'll find some research, and that will show you where they are with neurology in the brain. And the Buddha was already there. We need to be working with people who are keeping up with the development of neuroplasticity and who understand that you can change the brain. Our job as Buddhists, there's no denying it, is purification of the brain, but purification and retraining of the brain. If you practice right effort and you only do the first 2 steps, nothing changes. Everything's going to come back down on the person. I know this personally. I'm like Bhante Kusla. I had terrible, terrible traumatic experiences before I came to Buddhism, and no answers. No one would tell me how this all works. Now you have a lot of Buddhism out there happening in the neurocognitive science that you need to become aware of, because the brain can only do one thing at a time. And if you want to change the trauma, help the person replace it with the good things that we give them with the Sheila and everything, and the path that we were talking about, Ottawa was talking about, and everybody's been talking about today. Don't be shy about this.
Okay, so now my question is, now it's this simple, but I'm not refuting any question, but this is just a suggestion, okay? Now let's say New York City. Is there only one highway to get to New York City, or could there be many highways to get to New York City?
There's only one direct route, Bhante. But there's a lot of interesting things you can discover if you get off the interstate highways, right? Bhante Kadanya knows this. That's how we met.
But we have few highways to get to Toronto downtown. Okay, so I think this was very interesting. I'm so grateful to all of you. You have shed so much light with respect to today's topic, mental health and Buddhism. is Buddhism enough to help those with the traumas? And of course, you have shared your personal stories, some stories from the text, and then from your own experience of helping the people with trauma. And so I think those who watched us today, or those who are going to watch this presentation later on, I'm very positive they are going to benefit from this dialogue, this conversation. And thank you so much for making huge contribution to today's discussion. Time is up, and let us wind this up by reciting the Ovada Patimok Desana. So today I would like to invite Bhante Sankitya from Great Lake Buddhist Vihara in Detroit, Michigan, USA, to recite the Ovada Patimokkha Desana.
Thank you very much, Bhante. So we are right at the end of the discussion. So with all this wisdom, good thoughts, and knowledge we shared with everybody, let's wish, may all of us, all our friends who joined online, may all of us have mindfulness, courage, determination, wisdom, and most importantly, the good friends around us to face and overcome all our traumatic life experiences. And most importantly, not to forget them, not to completely run away from them, but to face them effectively and get over them productively. So with all these good thoughts, let's focus on the Patimokkha. Sabbha papassa akaranam kusalasse upasampada sacitta pariyodapanam etang buddhana sasanam kanti paramang tapotitikha nimbanang paramang vadanti buddha nahi pabbajito parupaghati samano hoti parang vihetayanto anupavado anupaghato patimokhe ca samaro mattanyutta ca bhattasmi panchanta sayanasanam adhichitte ca ayogo etang buddhana sasanam.
Sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Bhante Sankitya, for beautifully reciting the old Ovada Patimokkha Desana verses. It was very melodious. Thank you so much. Thank you, Reverend Vimala Bhikkhuni. Thank you, Bhante Janananda. Thank you, Mataji, Reverend Khema. Thank you, Bhante Kusala. Thank you, Bhante Vijita. Thank you, Bhante Kondanya. Thank you, Bhante Sila, for joining us. And with most respect, and big thank you to our teacher, Bhante Mudita, for joining us today. So I would like to wish you all happy Vasa. This is the Vasa period, and we will see you all in 2 weeks' time. Until then, all of you have blessings of the Buddha. Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu.